Hi, how are you? I am Henry Winkler. This is my incredible partner,
Lin Oliver. Nice to see you.
and this is the most talented.
Dan Santat, hello, it's a pleasure.
You are a.
I am an illustrator.
You are. What have you won?
I've won the Randolph Caldecott Medal in 2015.
And what are you up for?
I am up for the National Book Award for a memoir that I did.
That's the last thing he's going to say today. We are so happy to be here, and we're here because we just launched our brand new book, Detective Duck. It's for emerging readers. Lynn and I have been working together since 2003. We have written about 39 novels together in a very unique way, our way. And that is to say, there is more than one way to do anything. So if you're thinking about being a writer and it seems like daunting and almost impossible, I say, go to Lynn and she will help you create 39 novels.
Yes, I have lots of free time. Please I'll give you my phone number. Stop in.
You know what? She's not kidding.
Make you a chicken salad sandwich.
Very delicious on a buttermilk piece of bread. It's really incredible.
Brioche. It was a brioche.
A brioche.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was good. And we did that. I'll tell you exactly. We had that chicken salad sandwich while we were signing book plates.
I remember that.
At your dining
That's
room
right.
table.
That's right. Just for you.
How many?
How many chicken salad sandwiches?
No, how many book
No,
plates?
I'd rather talk about
I
the
only
chicken
ate
salad.
one sandwich. I feel a little plump, but that's how many did we
So
sign?
when you're looking at your books, if they have a delicious aroma of
Chicken.
some Hellman's mayonnaise, little scallion.
Yes, but how many book plates?
Oh, we did 900.
I think we did 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I ate 1,000 sandwiches.
Yeah,
And signed 2 book plates. Right.
maybe that's what it is.
So here it is. We also write Hank Zipser, and we wrote 12 Hank Zipsers from the 4th to graduating out of the 5th grade into the 6th. And we wrote 12 where he was in the 2nd grade. And during that time, he had a hard time, the character in the book, reading like I do, because Hank is me, dyslexic, kind of charming, resourceful, but didn't do well in school. So a book he could read we came up with
Detective Duck. We were just vamping.
Yeah.
And we said, oh, that sounds like a funny book. And then we never thought about it again for 3 years?
3 years.
Yeah.
And then we thought, this is going to be a great character. And during the pandemic, in between making jigsaw puzzles, we decided to write over Zoom Detective Duck. And once it was done, once all the characters were in place and the story was told, we needed to bring it to life. And I will say to you, we have worked with a lot of illustrators. I hope not one of them is watching. And they were very good. But then we were lucky enough for Dan to say yes. And Dan created these characters the way we dreamt them to be, the way we wrote them with personality. He made them come to life. It was a gift in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I first met Dan before he was even published. How many books ago was that? 100 books ago?
Oh, yeah, I've done over 120.
Yeah. And so I ran an organization called the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And Dan,
When did you do?
well, I started when I was 22, and that was about 3 years ago.
So it's 3 years old.
Yeah.
Should we drop that link? scdwi.org,
Yes.
which I highly recommend because that's where I got started.
Yes.
And if anybody's out there interested in getting into publishing, I highly recommend it.
So Dan came to a conference with his portfolio before he had been ever published, and he laid it out with all the other people who were bringing their portfolios, and all the editors who were there and the agents zoomed like mosquitoes around his portfolio and circled it, and he was immediately signed and immediately given a book contract, and has had an illustrious career since then. So Henry and I feel like family. We've written, did you say 39 books together? About that, and have worked really closely together. So to have Dan come into the team when we have this wonderful history together, and we love his work so much, and we love his personality so much, and his values so much. It's been a great, wonderful, really life experience creating this series.
And I met Dan without working together at your office.
That's right.
When we were writing, you came to say hello
I did,
to
yeah.
Lin.
Yeah.
And that's the first time we met. And then years later, here we are at the same table, having done this wonderful Detective Duck.
Yeah, I'm glad we could get this to happen.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be part of the company.
Yeah. And so Lin and I write comedy first because we know that, especially for young boys, reading is really difficult. They are reluctant readers. I could not read for the longest time. I read my first novel, as a matter of fact, when I was 31. I was told I was stupid, I was lazy, I was not living up to my potential, and I believed it. And then at 31, I said, I need to read like everybody else. And so I read the Clan of the Cave Bear.
Oh, it's a great book.
Okay.
That was my
okay.
first
Great
one.
book.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Her second one, not so good. But the first one was wonderful. And here we are.
Here we are.
I used to read that book, Clan of the Cave Bear. I have a son, Theo, also a writer, who is 42 years old. And when he was little, he had a thing where he wouldn't go to sleep by himself.
Right.
So I had to stay in his room until he fell asleep.
Right.
You know that drill?
Mhm.
And so I used to sit in the closet of his room, because sometimes it would take an hour or two.
Did you
Right.
take a chair?
I took a rocking chair
Okay.
and turned on the light, the closet light
Right.
that you pull, and I sat in the closet and read all of the Clan of the Cave Bear while he was falling asleep.
Wow.
And then I would get up, I'd hear his breathing get regular, he'd go to
Yeah.
sleep. I'd tiptoe to
You
the
have wood
door,
floors.
tiptoe, just get to open the
Yeah.
door, it would make a creak, and he'd say, "Mom," right there.
Yeah.
Next novel.
Right.
That's right.
So anyway, so we write for the reluctant reader. We think comedy is the gateway to getting people to read. We don't want to be their assignment. We want to be their entertainment. And then this time we met Dan. And as we go around the country and as we talk to students in schools or in wonderful independent bookstores, Dan has a big pad with him and his Sharpie.
Yeah.
And literally says, anybody think that that drawing is hard? I raised my hand. And he said, I'm going to teach you, using just the alphabet, how to make things come alive.
And I do a demonstration. I talk about symbols and how you can combine simple shapes and symbols to make pictures. And I think honestly, I think anybody who wants to draw can do it if they just practice. It's that whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours idea of just getting all the mileage in.
Are you saying that it takes 10,000 hours to become as good as you?
I probably have exceeded beyond that 10,000
Really?
hours. Yeah, like any artist that I know who's in publishing or has been accomplished. I've seen people who diligently put in the effort after 1 year, and I've seen tremendous results.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying I'm staying in my lane. I don't have 10,000 hours right now.
But you probably did to become an actor, or certainly
I
for me to
did.
become I wanted to be a writer since I was little.
Right.
And I worked I was the editor of the high school newspaper. I was the editor of my college newspaper.
Where'd you go to college?
Berkeley, UC Berkeley. Go Bears.
Yeah.
Go Bears. And every summer I worked for newspapers, and then I wrote television. I wrote 300, 400 episodes of television. You do get the practice.
Right.
And how long did you act before?
You know what? I went to college. My parents did not want me to be an actor, but I went to college and I got into one.
Mhm.
I applied to 28.
Yes.
And I studied theater and child psychology. Then I went to the Yale School of Drama. And the lesson there is you have a little sense of self. I thought I was stupid. I had no opinion that I could do anything, actually. I had a dream, but no belief in myself. But when it came to acting, I was always able to push the boundary and literally auditioned for the Yale Drama School and got in. I know, I'm as surprised as you are.
But you probably put in, I mean, think of all of the things that you've done in your career,
Right.
starting with Happy Days and
Yeah,
and all your films at Arrested Development and
yeah.
Barry and Parks and Rec. There's way more than 10,000 hours there.
Yes, well, there's 10,000 hours in between shots. When they're setting up the lighting and everything else, you could have lunch and take a nap. But it doesn't seem like 10,000 hours
Sure.
when you love it.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Doesn't even feel like work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, do we have a question?
So I have a series of questions that people have turned in, and I'm going to go down the list and I'm going to read them
Okay.
out loud. And
This will tell you everything you need to know about
Yeah, we've got
our
some-
eyes.
yeah, we've got some great questions here. I'm going to
He's the one
start
with the youngest set of eyeballs.
but with glasses. I'm going to start with this great one from Chris, who's out in the UK. And I think this question can apply to all three of us. What is the weirdest request that you've ever had from a fan?
Oh,
Can you put one of our novels in the washing machine? And I said, you can if you want to read it from your underwear. And that was in the UK. A child in the UK, I think in Woking, asked me that question.
Okay.
well, for me, I don't know if it's the weirdest, but it was the boldest request. Someone came up to me after I gave a speech and said, "Can I have your jacket?
They liked your clothes.
Can I have your jacket?"
Do you remember what jacket it like? What?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Did you
And I
give
said,
it
"Well,
to
I'm
her?
sort of wearing it now."
Oh, you were wearing.
She wanted it then. And she said, "Well, can I give you my address? And when you're finished with it, can you send it to me?" I did.
That's nerve.
Things happen.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Did you send it?
I was very tempted to because I got a little tired of it. But then
Right.
I thought, I wasn't really comfortable with that relationship.
God.
Yeah, don't blame you.
And you, sir?
Me, well, I entertain lots of kids, and one kid asked me to autograph his hot dog. Like he didn't eat it, and he just gave me this hot dog, and I obliged.
Did you? I hope
he put it in his backpack,
Uh-huh.
took it out, and then like the mom read the name on the hot dog, sent me an email, just like, "Who do you think you are, signing my kid's lunch?" And I was just like, she thought I was being cheeky, and I was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, let me sign your hot dog." And I said, "No, let me explain.
He wanted
Your
to
son
do it.
had nothing for me to sign. He gave me his hot dog and said, 'Please sign this hot dog.'"
Yeah, Sharpies
So-
are a little toxic too.
Yeah. I think that was that.
The hot dog is now a raisin.
right.
And your name is
It's
very
framed,
small.
it's framed. It's like the prom flowers. They just had it dried, and so my name is just that's framed.
Like hydrangeas.
Yeah,
Hang them upside
down. Okay, here's a question from Debbie in Illinois.
down.
Where did you get your idea to write this book?
Well, as Henry mentioned to you in our opening conversation, we mentioned Detective Duck just randomly because we needed a book for Hank Zipser to be reading. We thought that was a cute title. It then went into hibernation
Right.
for 3 years, and then the pandemic happened, and we were wanting to write something, and we were talking, and Henry said, Detective Duck? And I said, no. And he said, well, it was that book. And I said, no, I don't exactly recall. And then it started to sort of illuminate
Germinate,
itself. Yeah. And then we came up with the idea of, first of all, we know that kids love mysteries. And we
Right.
think that mysteries are really good for kids because they're entertaining and also works on their problem solving skills. We know that we love to write about animal and nature.
Right.
We know that we love to write about friendship, and this
Right.
is about a little duck who solves environmental problems at her local pond, but works with her friends to do that. And we know that we love to write comedy. Mostly we write books that make kids laugh. So when you put all those together, it was starting to feel like really a wonderful opportunity to create a new character that has something to do with the environment, that teaches kids that no matter how small you are, you can make a difference in our world,
Right.
and that entertains them and shows a group of friends working together for a common goal.
Yeah, who sometimes are prickly. The largemouth bass. He is very grumpy and has the worst breath on the planet. And but when they decide that they are going to work together as a group, they solve the problem at hand.
There you go. Here's one from Laura from Texas. What was your favorite book as a child?
Oh gosh, I'd love to read. I love to read so much. Even now, I read the carton of the toothpaste. I read the directions on the microwave packages. Reading makes me feel so happy. And I remember being that way from the time I was so young. I think I read Winnie the Pooh. My mother used to read Winnie the Pooh. She read me the poems of Lear, the Owl and the Pussycat.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Don't ask me to recite it or I will, but
Oh, really? Wow.
yeah. And then I discovered Nancy Drew.
Oh, sure.
Read all of
Mhm,
those, blew through the Hardy Boys,
Mhm.
did all the Wizard of Oz books. And then the book that changed my life when I knew that I had to be a writer was called A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by
Okay.
Dennis Smith.
Okay.
It makes you cry and cry. I love anything that makes me either laugh or cry. I don't like anything in the middle.
No, I understand. What made me cry was that I wanted to read. I had, for my birthday, someone gave me all the Hardy Boys.
Oh, that's a lot of books.
And I had a lot, and I couldn't read them.
Oh.
And I wanted to read. I wanted to enjoy. I wanted to know what everybody was talking about. And I tried, and my eyes would get tired. I would leave words out. And so it made me cry out of frustration, and it destroyed my self-image.
When did you finally realize that reading was difficult for you for a reason, not just?
Oh, when I was 31, our stepson, Jed, my stepson, not my wife's, it was her baby, who's now 52, but when he was in the third grade, he had trouble. We had him tested, and everything that they said about Jed was true about me.
Okay.
And I went, all that yelling, that humiliation, that grounding, that punishment was for nothing. My brain was wired differently. I wasn't going to get it anyway. So that was frustrating. And you?
So it sounds like we're all mystery folks. You and Nancy
Mhm,
Drew. You wanted to really gravitate to the Hardy Boys. I was a huge Donald J. Sobol fan. I was Encyclopedia Brown.
Encyclopedia Brown.
Yeah, Encyclopedia Brown. I don't know if those are still popular to this day.
No, they're not. But they were good books because you got to solve the crime.
Yeah, yeah, and they were like these really simple 12-page mysteries and each book would come with maybe 8 or 9 stories. And, he would go on these little mysteries, and his father was a detective, and sometimes there'd be these cases. I remember the first one I read where a man who worked in an antique store said that this burglar came in and snuck behind him and stole. I believe it was like a clock or something like that, and he said he could identify the criminal's face because he held up a metal spoon and could see the reflection of the crook.
Yeah.
And then Encyclopedia Brown was solving this mystery at the dinner table, and he said, "That's not true, because if you look inside the reflection of a spoon, your reflection is upside down, so you could not possibly identify, who the perpetrator was." Which means you, sir, were the one that stole the artifact. And I remember sitting there for years, just reading 8 or 9 of these books and never once solving any of the mysteries, saying, darn you, Donald J. Sobol, you're so clever. So that was one of my favorites.
Those are great books.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Here's a question from Calvin in Florida. Is there a theme you want young readers to be able to learn from this book?
Well, one of them for sure that Lin always talks about is that no matter how small you are as a human being, no matter how young you are, you can make a difference. And that is very, very important. And that it is very important that each, no matter how young you are, start to understand we only have one planet. And if we don't take care of it and we take it for granted, hello and goodbye.
I think that's really important. The fact that you can be effective even as a child. I think one thing we're all aware of as adults is that there's really a mental health crisis going on with young people in America, and I think part of the problem is the world issues are so big that they don't feel like they have any power to affect
Right.
change. So if at the very earliest age you can start to tell them that every little thing you do creates a ripple effect, and
Right.
that you can be effective in the world even though you're small. I think that's the most important takeaway from Detective Duck. They live in a beautiful, pristine pond. And the first book is about a rubber tire that comes barreling down a hill. It's being discarded by a man in a truck driving by, and it lands in their pond, and they don't know what to do about it because it's a disgrace to the natural environment.
And it could dissolve. It has oil in it. It has chemicals.
That's right.
It could destroy the pond. So, and the duckling is certainly too small to get this big tire out. But the group figures out together using the detectives'
Mhm. Skills.
deductive skills
Mhm.
how to get the pond back to normal.
So I think that's another takeaway too, is that working together, you can do greater things than working alone.
Yeah,
That's something that,
very
that
important.
all of our books over the whole body of work that emphasizes friendship and kindness and each person being able to contribute what they uniquely
Right.
can do. That
And
you
they
don't-
all have a good idea.
Yeah.
And you put all those ideas together.
Right.
Okay.
So I think this is fascinating because we have a very eclectic group of characters that all come together and make these really unique names. And here's a question from Jess out in North Carolina: who or what inspired the characters in these books?
Well, the first thing we did is we knew that this was taking place in a rustic rural pond. So we did some research and read about all the creatures who live in around a woodland pond. So that narrowed down our cast of
Right.
characters because we wanted it to be accurate. So then we came up with a beaver and a salamander and a dragonfly and a frog and a largemouth
Heron,
a heron,
largemouth bass,
largemouth bass,
a frog.
and a frog, and her son, a tadpole. So these are all characters that would live in that natural environment. And then, as a writer, you start to think, well, so we have a bass. Bass, they're kind of bottom fish. I don't
Yeah, they hide in the
aim
reeds.
to talk to you about fishing.
They're kind of loners.
They're kind of grumpy,
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't smell so good. So then you start to put together something that sounds like a funny character. And then you combine it with fantasy and imagination. The salamander, whose name is Sal, is a reader. And the pond is near a camp, a human summer camp. And kids leave little bits of comic books around. And he tears off pieces of the comic book and reads them. So he's somebody with a great imagination who loves superheroes.
And only knows half the fact.
And he uses them for many purposes.
Yes, he does. See, he takes his little scraps of comics, he reads them, he tells the story to all of his other friends. He lives under the leaves. When the bits of comics get too soggy, he uses them as a face cloth, a washcloth, because he doesn't want to waste.
And Dan, it would be an interesting thing for you to say when you first saw the characters, then how do you Dan is the one, we bring them to life with words and to give them characteristics that make them interesting. And then they go to Dan, who applies a visual imagination to them. What was that process?
Right. I find that. So I think I think typically if you're watching a Disney animated movie or something like that, they really lean into, you need to create silhouettes, certain shapes that just give the vibe of certain characteristics. So if you watch a Disney film, and you hear this a lot in animation character design, you want the silhouette of the character to kind of depict the personality of that character. I actually kind of disagree with that. I don't follow that moniker because I feel like sometimes the most interesting characters are the ones that you can't quite get a read on. Like they might look absolutely friendly, but they might be absolutely sinister people, So in this particular case, we have these characters who, they have certain personalities, but I don't give any inkling to the body type or anything that says, they're evil, they're nasty. But I mean, the only one that really was important for us to nail down was Willow. We really wanted Willow to be this, this cute, adorable character. But the one thing that I don't think is is tipped off in the artwork is that she's very dedicated, she's very clever. She's a natural born leader. You don't get that impression from a baby chick,
No,
right?
you don't.
And that's the thing that's kind of unassuming, and that's one of those things that I find interesting is that you can't necessarily judge a book by its cover,
Right.
and you carry all that into the characteristics of each character, and I really just think about the features of characters that are unique, like the beaver. You want to get the teeth. You want to give it an interesting head shape, but there's no
And warm. He's
yeah.
very warm.
Right, and a lot of that is given off in the mannerisms, how they handle their body language and things like that. And I'm one to admit that I will probably get into acting poses in the mirror just so I can get the right.
Isn't that
pose
funny?
and everything like that.
Because as an actor, sometimes one of the exercises we use is we put on a a mask, either from the nose up or from the nose down. And you stand in front of the mirror, and all of a sudden, on your own, without saying a word, your body starts to change, and you start to build the character. So it is exactly the same. And then I put mine into words and action, and you put yours into lines and color.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. No, I find that very important. I mean, one of the essential things we did in art school was we studied a lot of Hitchcock.
Oh, really?
Just studying framing and lighting and things like that. How to create mood with composition and things like that. And that in itself does a tremendous amount of storytelling if you know how to handle it the right way. Right. Here's a question from Greg from Illinois. What is one book you regret never reading that you wish you had when it was trendy and popular? And what are you currently reading?
Whoa, I have to think about that. So I'll tell you I can tell you what I'm currently reading. I just finished The Covenant of Water by Verghese, which is an 850-page multi-generational Indian saga. And I loved it because it was sort of my occupation for the summer. I love having a big, fat, multi-generational book. And it just, you fall into it, and it's, you live that book. So I just
My
finished
wife
reading
loves
that.
that book.
I just read Tom Blake by Ann Patchett, and I always have a children's book or 7 going at the same time, a picture book and a chapter book and a young adult novel. The one book that I regret not having read, well, that's hard to say because I didn't read it, so how would I actually know? But there are plenty of books. I really never read. I majored in English in college, and all the classics were assigned, and I read some of them, and then others seemed like too hard. I never read War and Peace.
Sure.
I read only parts of Moby Dick, skipping, when he would go into 150 pages about harpoons. It was like, no, thank you.
Or the coffin.
Thank you. Can we get to the whale part?
Yeah, right.
So there are books that I sort of read, but cheated on.
Sure.
And people tell me that Moby Dick is a great American novel, and one day
You're going to read about harpoons.
one day I'll read it all, but it is not today.
I regret not having read almost every book in the Library of Congress, but I do read Daniel Silva. My mind can read. Daniel writes with some fluidity, and my brain can absorb that and go along like it's going down a river of words. So I've read every one of his books in my adult life.
By the way, I just read Dan Santat. You may have encountered him before. Has a memoir. It's a graphic novel memoir called "There's a First Time for Everything," and it has been shortlisted for the National Book Award. And I read that and enjoyed and was moved by every single panel of it. It's a wonderful book.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So let's see. The one book you regret never reading. I mean, I do play catch up. I catch up and read. So I remember for a number of years, I struggled trying to read A Confederacy of Dunces.
Oh, ooh, yeah.
And it was one of those books that you would carry with you to the beach and
you're
stuff
right.
like that. It
To
would just
look
sit
good.
on a beach blanket and someone would walk by and be like, "That is such a good book." I'd be like, "I know, right?" And I failed getting through it like 2 or 3 times. And years had gone by until one day I said, "You know what? I really should finally read this book." And then the 4th time I got into it, and I hate to say this because it won the Pulitzer, right? 4th time I read it, Ignatius Riley is an obnoxious character. And by the time I was done, I said, I kind of regretted reading the book. I hate to say it. It's like Ignatius Riley was an obnoxious character. I was not a huge fan. But another book that let's see that I thought I wish I had read at the time I was late to was Donna Tartt's Goldfinch, the Goldfinch.
Yeah.
I never thought.
I skipped the middle
Well,
of
don't
that.
watch the movie.
Yeah, that's what people said, right?
Do not watch the movie.
But I never thought I'd be so intrigued by someone talking about the patina of wood furniture.
Oh yeah.
Tell me more. Tell me more
Not
about.
a detail is overlooked.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, the oil and
Yeah.
the oiling on the handle of the armoire.
You're a better person than I am.
And what am I reading right now? It's interesting because I go into the bookstores and I look and see what's trending, and I bring home these books and I feel like I'm suddenly part of some mom wine group reading the club, right? And so 2 of the books that I read recently was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle
Read
Zevin.
it in my book club over a glass of wine.
Fantastic book.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. And a big part of it was, I used to work in the video game industry, and she did her homework. She knew all the terminology.
Yeah.
She talked about the struggles of working in the gaming industry, but from the perspective of a woman, and I thought that was fantastic. And right now I'm reading Lessons in Chemistry.
Oh, good.
And I'm trying to blow and finish through it before the show on Apple Plus is completed. But yeah, no, that's been a fantastic book. And then before that, I was reading Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I mean, so I love The Martian. Project Artemis wasn't as good, but Project Hail Mary is fantastic. That was really good. All right, so let's see. Okay, so here's a question that I'm not sure if we already
Can I
addressed.
just interrupt for one second?
Sure.
Something I'm looking forward to reading
Okay.
there's a book called Being Henry.
Being Henry from the Fonz and Beyond, October 31st. And I don't know how this happened, but it's my memoir. Yeah.
Well,
And it's coming out.
I'm looking forward to read it. I could learn a few things.
And
about
the hardest thing I ever did in my professional career is read this for the audio.
Okay.
Holy mackerel! You gotta read everything that guy wrote. And I tell you, I literally stopped reading it and yelled at myself.
Sure.
So what were you thinking that you put those words together? But
What
it comes out.
Was none of it deja vu? Yeah, I mean,
It was deja vu because I lived it.
yeah.
Yeah. Being Henry from the Fonz and Beyond.
And when does it come out?
October 31st.
Excellent.
October 31st.
I do have a follow-up question. I'm curious.
What is that?
And I it's a spoiler or whatever, but I'm just curious because writing for kids is a big part of your life.
Yes.
Is there any discussion about? Is there any chapter committed to your life as a writer in the book?
That's an interesting question. There is, but because I am so amazed, no matter how many books we have written, I am amazed that my name is on these books, that I'm part of this writing team. And what I learned writing with Lin, I applied because I worked with a man named Jim Kaplan on the memoir. And then I looked and looked and looked for a person who would do it the way that I do it with Lin, and massage the story and back and forth with the story. I will say he's a big eater.
Okay.
And I didn't realize I had to fly him out to California and feed him 3 times a day.
Are you going to say that about me every time I bet?
No, because I would bring pastries, and we wrote together.
And I was a big pastry.
And I would bring Jersey Mike.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
would have a
that's right.
sandwich
That's
while
right.
because I need to eat,
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
you know,
Yeah,
while we're writing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to add. I also want to add that if there's any book festivals out there, I've seen them perform on the main stage at the LA Times Festival of Books, and they absolutely crush. They absolutely slay. And you don't want to be the guy that has to follow after them because they just commands a presence, and there's like a huge line signing afterwards. I've been on the main stage myself, but like I don't command the audience that they do. And it's a sight. It's a sight to be seen. So nationally, DC Book Festival or whatever, you'd have everybody on this panel for book festivals and stuff.
You know what they say, Dan? If you can't beat them, join them.
Sure.
And you
Well,
did?
that's my angle, yeah, right? LA Times. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's a question I think we may have already answered briefly. This is from Margaret from New Jersey. What made you all want to come together and write a children's book?
Oh, the whole idea started because, of course, being an actor is not so easy. So no matter how big you are, there are still very fallow periods. And I went to a friend. I said, look, I'm having a lot of trouble getting hired. And he said, write books for kids about your dyslexia. I said, I can't do it because I'm dyslexic, and there's no way that I believe I can write a book. He said, I'm going to introduce you to Lin. I said, okay, I don't know how that's going to work. So we went to lunch, and we had a terrible lunch because the fish was like, I don't know, days old. It was horrible. But the meeting was great. And we hatched Hank Zipser. And we just fell into this rhythm of I talked, Lin types. Lin has an idea, I wait, Lin types. Then Lin reads back to me what she wrote from her idea. We discuss every word. That discuss is Lin's word. I say we argue over every word and alliteration. And then Lin says to me, you drive me to drink.
And then I have a Diet Peach Snapple. I'm such a party person. My idea of like a raucous time is a Diet Peach Snapple. If I really want to let loose, I pair it with a half a chocolate chip cookie, and oh man, yeah. But I have something to say about that, about how we started writing children's books. So that's how we met. But over that lunch, over that rotten fish, Henry told me the story of his growing up, the story that he sort of alluded to with you, which is that here was this great child who was smart and bright and creative and funny and a good dancer and full of energy, and yet he felt bad about himself because he wasn't achieving in school, and he had parents and teachers who didn't understand that he had a learning challenge. And that was so meaningful to me, because I think every kid has that in some way. I love children so much, and they start out so believing in themselves, and then you see them in the system get knocked around. And so maybe he has a learning challenge. Maybe another kid feels too chubby, or feels like their teeth aren't straight, or their parents aren't providing for them in some way. Everyone has an area where they feel different. And so the idea of being able to write something where differences are appreciated and not something that make you feel bad was really touching and moving to me. And that's really how we started, how we overcame the bad fish.
Terrible. Never went back to that restaurant.
All right, here's a question, and I think maybe this will lead into Henry talking maybe a little bit about your passion for fishing. This comes from Frank out in Des Plaines, Illinois. Does this book have anything you've lived through? I don't necessarily think it's.
Do you know what? You write what you know. You write these little animals. They are parts of people we've come across, parts of people in our family, parts of people we imagine, parts of people I meet on the road when I'm public speaking. So there's always something. Like every great playwright writes, and the reason that Shakespeare is still alive is because every character you read in his plays, that whether they speak iambic pentameter or not, have been at your Thanksgiving table. They are your aunt, your uncle, your mother, your father, your brother, a friend that your sister brought from college, somebody you recognize. And it's the same with writing the characters in our books.
All right. So we have a few questions left. If there are any other questions, feel free to type them into the message board. This is a question from Ben out in Indiana.
Benny.
Ben. I don't think there's any interview with Henry Winkler that would not be complete without at least one Happy Days question. So, Mr. Winkler, what's the most memorable episode of Happy Days for you?
Do you know what? I don't know, because I have to tell you something. There are a couple of things. One, I had a dream when I was 7, lying in my bed that folded up during the day against the wall, in my little room with a sink about that big, dreaming about being an actor. I get Happy Days, and I'm living my dream. I love those people. I learned to play softball with those people. I don't know that I have a favorite episode of the 255 we did. What I liked was they let me ad lib. I went from E to whoa. I was able to ad lib whoa, which I got from horseback riding, which was my favorite sport at the time.
Huh. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Those
Whoa.
horses.
Hey, get over here. Whoa, don't you leave Arnold's.
All right.
What are you doing?
I did get something. I did get something from the.
I just noticed
here.
something.
What's that?
You don't need a comb.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah. Just hey. Here we go. Lightning round. Okay. So
Yes.
let's answer these as quickly as
Okay.
possible. All right. Who would you want to play you in a movie?
Ryan
That's a
Gosling.
loaded
Oh
question.
yeah, Ryan Gosling. Yeah.
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
You too? You want Ryan Gosling?
Yes. Or
Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess.
No one is making a movie in my life, but I'll come to the set.
Thank you.
And meet Ryan Gosling.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
like
okay.
Ronnie Chang.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my
Steve?
God.
What about Steve?
Yeah, no, he's awesome.
Yeah.
That too. Yeah. What was your first job ever?
Actually, I'm so happy to say this. My first job, I earned $5 knocking on doors to get out the vote for John F. Kennedy.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yep.
Nice.
I had to work for my father,
Mhm.
filing papers
Oh.
at his business that bought and sold wood. I had to clean the display cabinets of the different kinds of wood from all over the world. I don't even think I got $5. Yeah, you're very lucky here. On your vacation, you work here. You learn how to work here because you're going to take over the business. But Dad, I don't want to sell wood.
I had a paper route back in the day.
Did you?
When it was okay to have
Where?
12-year-olds go
Where?
work.
Yeah.
So I was out in Ventura County, out in Camarillo, just outside of LA. And I
Mhm.
delivered like 60 papers right before I would have to go to school, So I'd wake up at like 5:30 in the morning every day for like 3 or 4 years.
Get the papers.
Get the papers, fold them up, rubber band, put them in a bag, ride my bike out into the neighborhood, deliver the papers.
And then would you go home again and get your books, or did you have your books with you?
Oh no, I'd go home, get my books, head bike out to school.
Yeah, you were up at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, and I made like $120 a month, and
Yeah.
when you're 12 years old, that's amazing,
Yeah.
right? And then my first job outside of that was like I was a cashier at a comic book store, and so. But the weird part is that I worked there for 3 weeks, and then the comic book store burned down, so I never got paid.
I'm very sorry.
Yeah. What chore do you hate doing?
Oh, every single one of them. Every single one
What
of them.
chore do I hate? I love doing the dishes.
Yeah, me
that's
too.
great, right?
I
The warm
love
water.
doing the
yeah.
dishes.
Yeah.
I hate taking the garbage out because
I was just thinking that.
yeah, but it's you don't do it at your house.
I do.
Yeah.
I take the garbage out, put
Yeah.
it in the big. What I don't do is I don't take the big garbage can and
Yeah.
move it to the street.
Oh, that's the
I
worst.
hire somebody
Right,
to do
right.
that.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
lucky
that's
enough
the basis
to
of my
hire.
marriage. Is my marriage works because my husband takes the garbage.
Oh,
out.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Alan,
I
Yeah.
hate folding laundry.
do you?
Oh, I
And
love it. I'll come to your house.
Oh, because the socks, when you have to
Mm.
just go through a mountain of socks and find the right pair, like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, forget that.
We just replaced our washing machines that were many, many years old. The door in the corner was rusted.
Okay.
You know, you had to jiggle it to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
it to make it work. And when we moved it out, I went, "Oh,
There they are.
there's the other sock."
Right, right.
funny.
Let's see. What is your biggest fear?
A straight jacket.
Okay, okay, and that makes sense.
An iron lung.
Ooh.
It's the same thing. It's when I was little. We went to a county fair, and at that time, people still got polio.
Right.
Mhm.
And sometimes it affected your ability to breathe, and they put you in something called an iron lung,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
like an iron
Just your
straight
head
jacket.
is out.
And I remember I was maybe 3 years old, and I saw a mannequin in there, and I thought, the terror, the cold terror that ran through my body, I can summons it up at any single moment.
Okay.
Which brings us back to the comedy
An iron lung.
Detective Duck, who breathes on her own.
I'm also pretty afraid of having a bad hair day. So
A bad hair day
I
is
feel
good.
you on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. And the you know what? This senseless violence, the inability to talk things out, that is becoming a lost art in at least our country, and immediately go to either killing or bashing somebody is like so scary. It's so random now.
Right, right. Oh, I hear you.
what's your biggest fear?
My
You didn't
biggest
say.
fear, the ocean.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
like the deep sea. You know that scene in Finding Nemo
Yeah,
when they're
yeah.
looking past a reef and it's just dark blue
Yeah,
water?
yeah.
I would vomit and scream at the same time underwater. Like I would rather die in space
Mhm.
because I know that there's nothing that's going to nibble at my feet.
Oh wow.
Oh, it's the
Oh.
worst. Right, right. So
Wow.
that's the worst thing.
But you know, when you go to Thailand and that is your country of your
Yes.
parents' origin,
Uh-huh.
right? You can get a foot massage where you put your feet in a tank of water filled with fish, and they nibble at your
But
feet.
and they
Right.
nibble the dead skin off
Yeah.
your heels.
I would feel so sorry for those fish.
I want to tell you. Well, you know what I do? I wash first.
Yeah,
I-
those fish-
I-
yeah, I don't want to be
Courtesy to the
self-conscious around the fish, right? They're just like, this
Don't
is
want to be
repugnant.
self-conscious.
I want a refund. I'm a fish.
And goldfish all over Asia. Thank you for that.
All of a sudden, all these hundreds of fish come to the surface. Are you joking? Get your feet out of our water.
Good day, sir. All right, let's see. Let's scroll down here. So, let's see. What is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, what is my guilty pleasure?
Well, I don't feel too much guilt. I've sort of,
That's good.
after
Yeah.
like 50 years of therapy, I'm
Okay.
kind of like free of that. But I can tell you what pleasures are.
Mhm.
I mean, my biggest pleasure is music. You know, I could just put headphones on and
Mhm.
spend the next 10 years listening to music
Mhm.
and eating salty things.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah,
when
yeah.
you combine them, it's just bliss. You know, a bag of Doritos and
Mm.
the Eagles.
Yeah.
A pleasure is going to hear classical music
Mhm.
in a concert hall, fly fishing for trout,
Okay.
and my work is my pleasure.
Yeah.
When I am working on a set, I am like in another space.
Right, right. I'm with you with the salty foods. I
Oh.
love that.
The best.
Yeah.
Like if I get a bag of like Doritos
Yeah.
or Pringles
Yeah.
or
Ooh.
whatever, like
Yeah,
I just turn into a monster.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like a cow. They put out salt licks for
Yeah.
for cows.
Yeah.
You
For
know,
me, it's a
I
Yeah.
just-
cheeseburger.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Cheeseburger.
I've had some
Okay.
cheeseburgers with him.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice. I'll have to pick your brain about some places. Okay, no, not that question. Let's see.
You know, it'd be great if while we're doing this, type in what are your guilty pleasures.
mhm.
That would be fun to hear. What yours are. Type them in.
Oh, here's a great question.
Hello.
Where do you want to go that you've never been? We've been talking about travel.
I want to go back to Kyoto. I want to go back to Italy.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to Australia in February
Uh-huh.
with my memoir. Have we mentioned that? From Henry,
I
The
believe we
Fonz and
did.
Beyond.
Was that the one that comes out on
On the
October
31st of
Yeah,
October?
Yeah. Is there
I'm-
another one or that's
No,
the
no,
one?
no, that's it. That's the
And
one.
its name again was
It's
what?
Being Henry.
Oh,
There you
oof,
go.
I forgot it
I'm
already.
going to
Huh.
Australia, but that's where I would like to go. Back.
Fantastic.
I would like to go to, I like islands best,
Mhm.
and I would like to go to Prince Edward Island
Okay.
because I think the oysters there are really fantastic.
Mhm.
The idea of pulling an
Great
oyster.
fishing.
Oh,
Mhm.
and then I would like to go to any remote island in the South Pacific.
Okay.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
Nice.
Vanuatu or Espiritu Santo, or I don't know. I just like the idea
Yeah.
of mangroves.
I
and-
couldn't find them on a map, so I couldn't go.
Yeah.
All right, so I've always heard that a life-changing experience is going on a safari in Africa.
Oh, I
My
I've always
wife
wanted to
said
do
she
that.
left her heart there.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody I
I
know
never
who's
went.
gone has told me that it's just
Yeah.
an absolutely life-changing experience.
Yeah.
So for me,
Mhm.
you
So
know,
I'll add that to my list.
yeah.
And Iceland. Everybody likes Iceland.
Right, and they have that policy where if you make a stop there on a connecting flight, you're allowed to just wander around Iceland for 2 or 3 days. So you can have a connecting flight there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and there's they let you go out there without any visa or anything. You just go around
Wow.
for 2 or 3 days.
I'd like to see the Northern Lights. We
Oh,
went,
yeah,
we went to
bucket list.
Norway once, and we stayed up till midnight,
Mhm.
and then went out to see the sun
Mm-hmm.
at midnight. That was
Nice.
thrilling. But the Northern Lights, I think, would be
Yeah,
very
beautiful.
spiritual and
Yeah.
They
beautiful.
say it's beautiful.
All right, well, I think we're up with time, but
That's it.
been
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you very much.
Wow.
What a great time! What a great conversation. Should
I-
we say one more time? Let's all say it together.
what is-
Detective
yeah.
Duck. It wasn't
On the count
together.
of three?
Oh,
No,
good,
not at
good.
all. 1, 2, 3.
Detective Duck. Yeah.
Detective Duck. We have so many.
Yeah.
And,
sign these for all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would like to sign them for you.
Yes.
So
Here's
let
a
us know.
Sharpie. We'll sign on the way out. We'll
Right.
sign one.
Right.
All right.
Good time. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in with
Bye.
us. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day. Thank you. Wow.
It was great to hear from.
Hey, this is John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching today.